Hi, welcome to St Swithin's Online Midweek. My name's Jim, I'm the vicar here at St Swithin's. Thank you for tuning in today. We just wanted to give you a couple of nuggets really midweek that will hopefully inspire you and encourage you and just set you up for the rest of the week. The first thing we're going to do is Josh is going to just play a song for us. It's a song he's written, it's a song we sang on Sunday, and we love this song because it just expresses something of where our heart is as a church, but also comes out of the times we're in. So we hope you'll enjoy that you'll be able to kind of use that in your own worship this week. And then secondly, Joseph caught up with Will Van Der Hart, who's the pastoral chaplain at HTB and director of the Mind and Soul Foundation, just to chat a bit about mental health and how we can look after ourselves with life as it is at the moment in lockdown and quarantine. So I hope you enjoy both of those. We're going to hand over to those now, and then I'll just catch up with you all at the end.
We will sing, oh, for all you've done. We've seen you move your wonders, God. Oh, here we stand with our thankful hearts. You are good, it is who you are. And despite of how I'm feeling with all that's going on, you are worthy, God, so we're lifting up our song. You've always been beside me, that I know is true. You are worthy, God, so we sing as one. You are good, you are good, you are good, you are good. You deserve all the praise we have. We can't contain all the joy we've found. We will trust your promises. You've been there until the end. And despite of how I'm feeling with all that's going on, you are worthy, God, so we're lifting up our song. You've always been beside me, that I know is true. You are worthy, God, so we sing as one. You are good, you are good, you are good. That's why we sing. You have done a new thing. You are good, that's why we sing. You have done great things. You are good, that's why we sing. You have done a new thing. You are good, that's why we sing. You have done great things. You are good, that's why we sing. You have done a new thing. You are good, that's why we sing. So despite of how I'm feeling with all that's going on, you are worthy, God, so we're lifting up our song. You've always been beside me, that I know is true. You are worthy, God, so we sing as one. You are good, you are good, you are good, you are good.
Hi, Will. It's great to be able to chat to you. I wonder first if you could just tell us who you are, what you do, and perhaps how that's changed in the last few weeks.
Sure, yes. I'm pastoral chaplain at Holy Trinity Brompton, but I've also been running a mental health charity called the Mind and Soul Foundation for the last 16 years now, with consultant psychiatrist Dr. Rob Waller and psychologist Dr. Kate Middleton. So we've been helping the church address issues of mental and emotional health, and particularly help Christians to engage with psychological and psychiatric services effectively. So life's got super busy, particularly as we try and support the church and the congregation through the mental health challenges of the COVID episode. But we're doing okay. We're doing well. It's good to be here with you today.
Good. I'm really glad. And I guess what are some of the key things that you're hearing people struggling with at the moment?
Well, one of the things we know about mental and emotional health is that isolation is a real challenge to folk who are struggling. And mental health particularly tends to propagate when people become isolated. And the community of the church is really significant for people's well-being and their flourishing. Aside from all the spiritual benefits, just being in a loving community is really good for us. So this social lockdown, the sort of isolation that propagates, it's really hard for people who've got pre-existing mental health issues, but actually it can also trigger, if you like, or lead to us feeling more isolated and therefore potentially more depressed. Even if we don't reach a clinical level of depression, we might feel like we have persistent low mood, we might feel levels of sadness. And then because of the health issues around COVID, there's also a lot of health anxiety arising. So we naturally would feel more nervous about whether or not we're going to be doing well physically. We might feel very concerned about family members, particularly vulnerable family members, about how they're going to be doing. So there's quite a lot going on in terms of our mental and emotional well-being right now. And the challenge for us is, how do we thrive as faithful Christian people in a setting which is relatively challenging to our mental and emotional health?
Yeah, and so what are some of the ways to combat that stuff, to work so that we're not suffering?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things we can do, and thank God for modern technology, which actually helps us to overcome the first one. I mean, the first thing to think is really about how we frame. We talk a lot about framing, cognitive framing, how we look at a problem. And one way to perceive our circumstances is to say, well, I'm very isolated. But what I'm saying to people is that we might be isolated, but we might be isolating, but we're not isolated. And so whilst we're isolating, we need to perceive our circumstances slightly differently. So if we're with a family, then obviously we're isolating together. If we're a single person, it becomes more challenging. If we're an elderly person, it's more challenging. What I'd say is use the telephone or use your mobile device to connect with friends or family members every day for at least half an hour, and avoid talking about coronavirus and the news, but spend at least half an hour in a good quality relational connecting environment online, and know that you're not isolated even though you're isolating. And the key point really is that we're not and can never be isolated from God, that actually whatever circumstances we're in, we are always with him. And I love it in Psalm 139, it says, when I go up to the heavens, you are there. Where can I flee from your presence? When I go down to the depths, you are there. And there's this sense that in our circumstances, God was always with us and will never leave us. And that sense of being connected to God is so important for our mental and emotional health right now.
Brilliant. And I've been wondering, do you think that this is perhaps an opportunity for us in the church, for people who haven't experienced mental health stuff before, to I guess have a bit of an understanding, a bit more of a sense of what it might be like for people in their ordinary lives outside of this?
Well, certainly, I've been exploring the idea of this sort of divine interruption, that actually our lives have been so fast-paced up to this point that we've often struggled to demonstrate empathy and compassion to people who can't live at that kind of pace. I was thinking about the story in Luke 10 of Jesus talking about the Samaritan man, and I very much identified with the priest and the Levite in the story, who sort of they're on their way to the temple to do very important business, and the man who's been beaten up by the robbers, he's a diversion, but he's not a diversion that they're willing to take. So they carry on their way to the temple. And I think my life has been so scheduled up to this point. Every moment is sort of allocated. and then the Samaritan man, he's clearly a wealthy man. He's on his own donkey. He's got money in his pocket. He comes across this man, and there's all sorts of social reasons why he shouldn't attend to him, because this man's a Jew, he's a Samaritan. They generally didn't like each other in the period, and yet he allows himself to be diverted by God to take care of this man on the floor, and he spends his time and his money to undertake that divine diversion. And I think, in a way, I mean, God hasn't caused this coronavirus thing, so let's not pretend he has. But what he does do is redeem from the ashes his own diversions into our lives. And I think there's a bit of a divine diversion for all of us here to begin to associate, if you like, with the broken bodies of the people on the floor in life. And there might be the lonely, there might be people with mental health issues, they might be the vulnerable and ostracized in our society. I think we've been living so quickly that we've failed to see the diversions that God might be sending us on. And I guess my hope is, as we've learned to appreciate community in a very new and dynamic way, that we'll appreciate building community with people who've previously been edited out of our stories.
That's really helpful. I mean, I've been thinking it's interesting from a church perspective. I've been hearing stories from other people, and churches seem to have had loads more people connecting in over the last few weeks, people that don't normally connect into services coming online and joining in and that kind of thing. And that's sort of really good and really exciting. And yet at the same time, there's this sort of tension with that good stuff and the fact that it's not a good thing, you know, that there's a huge amount of suffering going on, whether those who are ill or those with mental health issues, all of that kind of thing. How do you sort of hold that tension well?
Yeah, I mean, Joseph, I think you hit the nail on the head there, because it's about holding it in tension. I mean, there's real danger of just huge over positivity and triumphalism. And this isn't the time for triumphalism. Thousands of people are dying around the world of this disease. And I think it would be terrible if the church was opportunistic in this circumstance. We're here to show the compassion, love, and presence of Jesus. And the Bible is filled with stories of lament. And we need to do what Jesus called us to in the Beatitudes, you know, which is to bless those who are grieving and, you know, to mourn with those who are mourning. And in Ecclesiastes, that there's a time to grieve, and this is that time. So I think acknowledging and grieving with others is a key part of our mission and a key part of our compassion. It is also true that optimists or people who are too positive tend not to do really well in situations like this. I was reading a really interesting article about American Vietnam veterans. Thousands of them were taken prisoner to these horrific POW camps. And actually only 591 of them ever returned to the US after their incarceration. And one of the Medal of Honor winners was interviewed about his experiences. And the interviewer said, "And who didn't come back?" And he said, "Oh, that's easy. It was the optimists." And I found that really interesting. Wow. That the optimists didn't survive because they were so busy predicting the end of their incarceration that they were just flooded with disappointment after disappointment. Whereas people who took a more realistic and long-term view did better mentally. And I think we've got to be really careful in the church that we're not offering simple remedies to complex problems. Ultimately, we can be in this circumstance for a very long time. The key thing is, how are we being in this circumstance? And so I think there's a real important that we're in the place of lament, that we are grieving, but equally we don't diminish the redemptive work that God is doing amongst us as a community. I always think, though, that work is better understood retrospectively. So I kind of think, why don't we hold on? And then when we're a year away from this really terrible time, we'll look back and say, well, it was terrible, but look what God has brought through it. Look at the fruit that has been born of it, and we'll see the redemption story then. I think it's too soon to start painting redemption stories in the middle of this crisis, when we just need to be hands and feet to people and serve them and love them in a socially distant and appropriate way.
That's really helpful. And I had a question come in for someone that's perhaps a bit broader than this, but perhaps particularly relevant at this time. What sort of advice would you give to someone who feels that they've not got a lot of hope for their future, but does actually have a faith and their faith is quite firm? How do you deal with that difficulty?
Well, I mean, hopelessness is a really significant challenge right now. And I think a lot of people do feel a level of hopelessness and pessimism about the situation. I think it's very important to recognise that there are bands of hopelessness. And if someone who's listening does feel persistent feelings of hopelessness and loss, that they might be dealing with a mental health problem there. And if that's the case, it's worth exploring that with your NHS provider. The NHS is still taking psychological referrals, mental health referrals right now, and they've got a team specially set up to deal with these kind of issues. And you can find out more through the minorsoulfoundation.org website if you're worried about how you should do that. But I think that this feeling of hopelessness is, it might be tipping into a mental health problem, but it might just be the feeling that we all have right now, which is I'm just not sure what the future holds. For me as a Christian leader, I'd say that there's a great remedy to that anxiety about the future. It's not knowing the future, but it's knowing who holds the future. And I think about, I've got 3 children, and they often don't know where they're going. And they say, "Where are we going, Daddy?" And I'm thinking, there's no way of me explaining them. And I say, just relax. I'll tell you when we get there. And they can trust the future because they know who's driving the car. They know who's holding their hand. And I feel like a key journey for us all during this COVID experience is not trying to take control from God, but trusting that God has our futures in his hands. And so a great way of dealing with hopelessness and pessimism is by forging relationship with the one who's safe, the one who ultimately has our destination in his safe hands. And for me, that's Jesus Christ. And as we approach this Easter season, I'm glad to put my hand in the one who's experienced death and resurrection life, so I can trust that my own future is eternally secure in him. So Jesus is ultimately the greatest comfort for my mental, emotional health, because I know I can trust him with my future.
Brilliant. That's amazing. And finally, sort of any quick tips for surviving lockdown? What have you found helpful?
Yeah, I think there's a number of psychological tips we can offer that are beneficial. Do go to our site because there's tons of stuff there. But I'd say it's really helpful to have routine every day. And if you're going to have a day off, have Sunday off your routine. But keeping a routine is good for you because it actually helps you to plan your day and stay productive. I would encourage people to get up at the same time every day and go to bed at the same time. Don't drink too much alcohol. Dr. Jim White, who's one of the kind of key Scottish proponents of stress reduction, has a 10-point plan. It's very simple. He says, face your fears, be more active, and watch what you drink. And those 10 words in themselves encapsulate what it is to deal with a lot of stress. We'd encourage you to be productive and creative every day. So do something that you like, knitting, poetry writing, make little films, but do something creative and interesting. Stay off the news feeds. Half an hour of news a day is all that you need, but don't scroll through the news feeds. Definitely don't troll them, but don't scroll through them all day long either, because it won't help you. Try and find reassurance in the wrong place. And don't watch the news at night. Watch the news in the morning, because then you'll have a better night's sleep. Watch what you eat. Make sure you're trying to just focus on health, exercise, nutrition, and well-being, so you're strong and healthy as far as you can be in the situation. And as I say, connect with someone every day for a good quality conversation, but not about the coronavirus.
That's really helpful. Some really great advice. Will, thanks so much for doing this with us. It's really great to hear from you. My pleasure. Hopefully we'll connect again soon.
Guys at St. Swithin's. Yeah, have a great day. God bless.
Cheers. Bye.
Hey, welcome back. I just wanted to finish this little midweek session by talking about alpha. Now, don't turn off when you hear the word alpha. And I say that because ever since we planted 6 years ago, every term we've been running at least one alpha course. And it's easy, isn't it, to hear the name alpha and just not intentionally switch off, but think, well, okay, I know about alpha, or I've done alpha, or I invited someone to alpha, and think that this message about alpha is for someone else who's newer. What I'd really, really, really love us as a church to do is really get behind alpha at the moment in a fresh way. You know, alpha has gone online, and stories from around the network, we're seeing more and more people doing alpha than ever before. There's something about this online platform that's allowing more people to access alpha. Here in Lincoln, we're already onto our second course this term. The first course was full, so we started another one this last week, which has been so exciting. And kind of the capacity for alpha at the moment is huge. We could, in theory, start at least one alpha course, a new course every day, if we had the people who are wanting to sign up for it. Now, I believe Lincoln is no exception to the rest of the country. Lincoln needs to know Jesus as much as everyone else. People in Lincoln are asking the same questions as much as everyone else, wanting to explore questions of life and of faith and spirituality. And so I believe we have a golden opportunity right now to see our Alpha courses full and brimming over and people coming to know Jesus. So I would love us as a whole church, every single one of us, to get behind this. One very simple way I'm going to ask us to do that, and that's to pray. We as a staff team, we're all setting our alarms for 7:30 each day in the morning and the evening to pray for one person to come on the Alpha course. And we'd love to invite you, encourage you, implore you to do the same, whether it's 7:30 in the morning or evening or both. Set your alarms now and just be praying each day for one person to come and do Alpha. Now it might be you go, well, I don't know anyone I can pray for, or I've asked someone before and they didn't come. That doesn't matter, just keep praying for them. That's on God, not on you, but our job is to pray. And if you don't know anyone, then use that time at 7:30 just to go, God, who can I pray for? Who do you want me to pray for? And wait for him to give you a name. But I'd love each and every one of us in the church, no excuses, to be doing this. Why? Not because it's about Alpha, but because I just believe these are amazing times. There's such opportunity in these times. And, we've read articles about people Googling prayer, about a quarter of the population now have tuned into online church, and particularly sort of the age 34 demographic who've been called the lost generation before, particularly that generation are doing the same sort of thing. There's something brewing, something exciting, and I'd love us to kind of be a part of all God wants to do. If you're watching this and you're not plugged into church and you're like, what is Alpha? You can go to stswithins.org/alpha. It tells you all about it there. But basically, it's just an opportunity, an open space to ask questions, to explore some of the deeper questions of life. And so we'd love to invite you to come and do Alpha. As I say, stswithins.org/alpha. That's all I wanted to say, but please do be praying. Please do take that challenge on, because I believe great things are about to happen through that here in Lincoln. Lovely. It's been lovely to see you all. Thanks for connecting in. We're online again, 10:30, 6:30 as well on Sunday, stswithins.org. All the information is there. Do stay in touch. God bless you and have a great rest of the week.